I always had a very hard time getting a job because of my record. So I get a girlfriend, and she was friends with the supervisor at an auto club, a famous auto club. And she helped me get a job there, and that was good because they had insurance. I never had insurance before. As an adult, I never had insurance before, which I needed because smoking so many cigarettes and weed, I was literally coughing up blood. I could cough up blood on command, just be like, blood, boom. So one day, I finally get my license back in 2007 after it being suspended for like 4 years. Because in Pennsylvania, if you get caught with weed, even if you're not driving, they would suspend your license for a year, even if you're just sitting in your house. And also, it got suspended because I was driving without a license. Because originally on ARD, they suspended my license. And then when I got taken off of ARD, they gave me the same suspension again. And my lawyer was appealing it and said I could drive. Turns out my license was suspended. So they suspended it for a year. So that's 2 years. Combined with the year for getting caught with that one guy's weed that was right outside the house. So that was 3 years. So my license was suspended for 3 years in that one block. One day, I get my license back, 2007, and I think I'm a pretty good driver. If I get into an accident, it will be someone else's fault. So I'm just gonna drop full coverage. A few days later, my girlfriend doesn't want to chill, and I get sad. I'm like, oh, I'm so sad. So I go to the cousin detectives who, my old roommate who used to live upstairs. I go to his house. They were having a party. Get a red Solo cup. He fills the whole thing up with vodka. I chug it, and then I leave. And I pass out at 60 miles an hour and rear end a car. Basically, that was stupid. I said, I'm never gonna do that again, because that was real stupid. I could have killed someone, honestly. Yeah, and my whole life would have I could have killed someone or killed myself, and that my whole life would have changed just like that. So, that car, brand new. My mom bought it for me in 2003. I drove it for 1 year, then my license was suspended for like 5 years due to all of the suspensions. And I get my license back and total it 3 months later. It only had 15,000 miles, and no full coverage means all that money was just gone. This happened 2007 during my tenure at the auto club. One day, the supervisor comes up to me with a problem. The only way I knew how to communicate was negatively by becoming defensive. So while trying to explain what happened, I was negative and defensive. And my words could be real biting. Like, I knew how to piss people off instantly. Yeah. I got a lot of stories about that. And so I got written up for being disrespectful. I go down to human resources, and human resources says, okay, don't voice your complaints verbally. What you need to do is write it down on instant messenger. I guess they were thinking that if I write it down on the inner office messaging system, that my words would be less biting and I would be able to think about what I was saying. Because face to face, it would escalate quickly just based on perception of my spirit. So anyway, they told me to use the inner office messaging system. Later on, one day, over Messenger, a supervisor asked me if I was doing a procedure that I had already been doing. And it was a procedure that I didn't really agree with. So there was a little conflict there. A procedure that didn't really make any sense. And basically that procedure was that, well, I'll tell you about the procedure in a few minutes. So I said, no, because I'm a moron. Of course I did it. And then I get another write-up for messaging that I was a moron. So I go down to HR, and they say to me, okay, if you got a problem, next time write it in a letter. Don't talk to the supervisor. Don't message the supervisor. Just write it in a letter and then give it to them. So the problem that they were asking me to do that I didn't really agree with was over time they were reducing the staff and the amount of garages. So where there were 3 people doing 3 people's jobs, now there was 1 person doing 3 people's jobs. And where there were 4 garages, for example, there was 1 garage covering a huge area. So people were waiting on the side of the road for like 3 hours or on hold for a long time trying to get a tow. I guess they did this to save money, but yeah. So this was frustrating everyone. So obviously the members were complaining that it was taking 2 hours for anyone to even get out to them. So the management solution was lie to the members and tell them that it's gonna be 60 minutes when it's actually gonna be 90 minutes or 2 hours. And yeah, so that's the procedure that they wanted me to do, which that's how I got the other write-up, being a smart ass about that. So that procedure was jacked up. And you know what I did was I said, I'm going to write a letter to the bosses to give to the garage reps about the problems that we're having. And I had everybody sign it. I had people in the call center sign it, right? I gave it to the supervisors to sign. The level 3 supervisor signed it, which was the bottom. Then I gave it to the supervisor, and he said, I gotta ask my supervisor, which was the call center manager, which was the guy that hired me. I gotta ask him to review this before I sign it. So he goes, talks to the call center manager, and the call center manager calls me into his office. And he says, this letter is going to hurt the garage representative's feelings if you give it to them. And also, so if you give it to the bosses, or to the garage reps, or show anybody else this letter, I'm going to fire you. What he really meant was, you're gonna make me look bad. So considering that I didn't want to get fired, I curled up in a ball, an angry ball, and didn't say anything, because I didn't want to get fired. A couple weeks later, it was super busy. I was doing 3 jobs, huge backlog of calls needed answered, huge backlog of tows needed dispatched to the garages. And then a garage driver calls me, and he says, I want to talk to the supervisor. And I say, supervisor, a garage wants to talk to you. And the supervisor says, no, tell him to call his garage rep. You gotta call your garage rep, the supervisor says. And he says, I want to talk to the supervisor. I say, supervisor, this guy is insisting on talking to you. And she gets agitated and says, tell him he needs to call his garage rep. And so I say, you gotta call your garage rep. And then he says, let me talk to the supervisor. So I get real frustrated because the supervisor's just watching movies, and that's why seemingly she doesn't want to take the call. He says, I want to talk to the supervisor. I say, he wants to talk to you. She says, tell him he has to call his garage rep. I say, you gotta call your garage rep because apparently nobody wants to talk to you. As I was saying that, the supervisor was walking by, the call center supervisor, the one who threatened to fire me. He was walking by. Yeah, the next day, they called me up on the phone before work, and I get fired. Now, after I get fired, I file for unemployment, and the auto club didn't fight it, so I get 2.5 years of unemployment, because this was at the time of the recession, 2009. So I get 2.5 years of unemployment. Now, I tried to go back to the job I was at before I got a job at the auto club, because I was working there as a manager at Domino's for almost 2 years. And they wouldn't take me back because I was working two jobs at the call center and at Domino's. The owner said, "Oh, if you want to come in, call me." I didn't call him, so I didn't want to come in because I was tired from working two jobs. And that night that I didn't come in, they get robbed. His wife gets robbed at gunpoint. And so 3 years later, he was still mad about that and he wouldn't hire me back. So, yeah. But like I said, luckily it was a recession and I got unemployment for 2.5 years. Then during that time, I got certified as a personal trainer, got real fit, was gonna start my own business, but something totally different happened because then 2011 came